Hello, today's video is going to be dedicated to a singular event which has rooted itself in the global awareness of the public as the event, defining a lot of facts, theories, research, and even conspiracies related to UFOs. The event, which was notably featured in the X-Files series and became a pivotal reference point for that series. The famous or infamous, depending on how you look at it, alleged UFO crash in Roswell, New Mexico in July 1947. It is a somewhat less known fact that the Roswell incident was a part of what was dubbed the UFO craze of 1947, a series of sightings and other UFO events which happened across the United States of America. It was the first of those events, the sighting of the 9 UFOs flying in formation by a civilian pilot Kenneth Arnold, which gave rise to the term of flying saucer and caused the initial interest in the phenomenon. Over time, though, that event was pushed to the background by the main event we are going to discuss today. Now then, there are many, often contradictory statements, recollections and reports related to the Roswell event. What I am going to do is to first present the official versions of the event, and then we will proceed with the unofficial presentation of the incident as studied by ufologists and persons passionate about the prospective extraterrestrial life. The event happened on a farm owned by one Mr. Brazel, a farmer owning a ranch in New Mexico near the town of Roswell. On May the 5th, 1947, he was visiting his family nearby, and at the time he was informed about the just beginning UFO craze following in the wake of the aforementioned Kenneth Arnold sighting. The next day, on May the 6th, he discovered a debris of unknown origin on his land, and initially assuming some sort of an aircraft launched from one of the military bases and airfields in the area, underwent a catastrophe in the air, and the debris just landed on his farm. He notified the local enforcement in the person of Sheriff Wilcox. The sheriff arrived at the farm and, reaching a similar conclusion but also somewhat suspicious of the findings, which seemed a bit unusual in terms of the material found, he called the Roswell Army Airfield, currently Walker Air Force Base. The airbase delegated Major Jesse Marcel and Captain Sheridan Cavitt to collect the material from the Brazel's ranch, and so they did. On July the 8th, the public information officer of the Roswell base, Walter Hoth, issued a press release according to which the military had recovered a flying disc near Roswell. A flight engineer at the local base was one of the military men who loaded what was supposedly a flying saucer on board a plane heading to the Fort Worth Army Airfield. He described the recovered material as being extremely light and large enough to be fit inside the trunk of a car. George Walsh, the Roswell radio station KSWS director, broadcast the news over the air and forwarded it to the Associated Press. This is when a proverbial hell broke loose over the media channels, and phone lines to the radio station quickly became completely overwhelmed. Walsh could not even contact Sheriff Wilcox for any extra information about the topic. The media were calling from all over the world soon, and the news spread like a wildfire. To quote the official press release, "The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence office of the 905th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force Roswell Army Airfield was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers and the sheriff's office of the Chaves County. The flying object landed on the ranch near Roswell sometime last week. Not having phone facilities, the rancher stored the disc until such time as he was able to contact the sheriff's office, who in turn notified Major Jesse A. Marcel of the 509th Bomb Group Intelligence Office." However, the military itself decided to debunk the report soon afterwards, as General Roger Ramey, with his chief of staff and a weather officer, called for a press conference during which they identified the material as pieces of a downed weather balloon. This was followed by a series of news and media reports offering prosaic explanations of the event. On July the 9th, the Roswell Daily Record, a local newspaper, reported that no engine or metal parts were found at the crash site. Farmer Brazel also told the newspaper that the collected material included rubber strips, tinfoil, paper, tape, and sticks. Major Jesse Marcel, when interviewed, reported that the wreck contained parts of a weather device, including tinfoil and broken wooden beams. And so the Air Force explanations provided in the media on the 9th and 10th of July 1947, lacking any hints regarding the actual nature of the balloons, rooted itself as the official version of the events, and the Roswell crash quickly faded into obscurity. This obscurity was further cemented by the two other hoaxes from summer 1947, which we are going to mention at some point, I hope. However, the event was not completely forgotten and was revived much later. This is the point when we are going to move over to the expanded lore surrounding the event and fueled by UFO researchers over the years and their efforts. In the wake of the rumored UFO crash in Aztec, New Mexico in 1948, which also allegedly included bodies of alien pilots who died in the crash, the events at Aztec and Roswell became conflated in the general awareness of the public. The alleged bodies which came with the crash were also mentioned in novels and conspiracy theories surfacing over the next 2 decades. Thus, the event was further expanded upon, and the crashed craft was now apparently made of a material much stronger than any metal found on the Earth. There were small humanoid pilots, now commonly referred to as the Greys, on board the craft. The craft itself had strange and unreadable glyphs on it, and so on. The bodies were reportedly transported in secret to the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. The Roswell story itself regained traction in 1978. That year, a UFO researcher, Stanton Friedman, interviewed Major Jesse Marcel, who took part in those events 30 years prior. The Major now reported that the weather balloon story was a cover-up from the military and that he now believed the recovered materials were extraterrestrial in origin. This story gained even more attention when Jesse Marcel retold it for the National Enquirer in December 1978, and as a result of a TV interview he provided in September 1980. The year 1980 also saw the publication of the Roswell Incident book, which included the report of bodies recovered with the crash. In the years that followed, the incident was extensively studied by various ufologists. The story was also expanded and included the alleged Majestic 12 group in charge of the cover-up and in a wider charge of the events, presented in a series of documents allegedly issued by parts of the government and delivered on purpose to the UFO community. This particular element was a hoax perpetrated by one Richard Doty, who reportedly represented the Air Force Intelligence Service and disseminated the documents on purpose to muddle the proverbial waters. The interviews carried out with various witnesses also added conflicting and varied reports of what happened near Roswell in July 1947. Eventually, an official report was published by the US Air Force. Its initial version was published in 1994 and indeed confirmed the fact that the balloon story was a cover-up, but for a military Project Mogul, carried out for surveillance purposes. The balloons were sent airborne as a part of a geosurveillance network, the task of which was to detect unusual seismic activity, which would hint at the Soviet Union carrying out tests of nuclear weapons. The UFO community, however, rejected the findings, while skeptics accepted it as a fact. The final version of the report, published in 1997, also indicated that insulation bags used for retrieval of temperature-sensitive equipment from the New Mexico desert could have been easily mistaken by the eyewitnesses as body bags used to transport dead bodies of the alleged alien beings. The expanded lore regarding the Roswell incident also include an alleged alien autopsy video recorded in the aftermath of the event. However, the video was later proven to be a hoax, and a similar version of said video was also presented in the X-Files series. One item of the lore surrounding the Roswell incident particularly worth mentioning is the so-called Ramey memo. While the Air Force tried to calm down the initial burst of interest in a potential extraterrestrial visitation, General Roger Ramey, in charge of this effort and the commander of the 8th Air Force, was photographed holding a telegram message. The photograph was fairly blurry and the lines of the message were also grayed out. However, the UFO community was dedicated enough to initially decipher the message partially and eventually, perhaps not completely, but at least well enough to be somewhat accurate. The combined effort of CGI artists, photographers, and forensic analysts using modern computer software restored the piece to the form as can be seen now on the screen. While still a bit unclear, the message clearly refers to a disc-shaped craft and visitors or aviators. It also allegedly contained a reference to victims of the crash. While the use of the word aviator would not be unusual in the context, the possible use of the word visitors was peculiar, and especially reference to a disc clearly could not be one to any conventional aircraft in use at the time of the event. In 1997, a retired Army intelligence officer, Colonel Philip Corso, published a book titled The Day After Roswell, as the 50th anniversary of the incident approached. His book combined many of the now well-rooted theories and his own claims. In the words of Corso, he saw a non-human body placed inside a glass coffin filled with an unidentified liquid. He also claimed that he was one of the personnel overseeing a reverse engineering project intended to copy alien technology from the crashed craft. Curiously enough, as much as skeptics point out inconsistencies and wishful thinking in Corso's story, the UFO community by large is rather positive about his revelations and seems to lend a lot of credence to them. The Roswell story was also touched upon by several presidents of the United States. Barack Obama indicated that the event itself is not as exciting as it may seem, and that the related information is not as secret as most people think. Bill Clinton said that he had documentation regarding the reviewed incident. In 2020, in an interview with his son, Donald Trump indicated he would consider releasing more information about the incident, and that he will not talk about what he knows about it, but that the facts that he knows are very interesting. Roswell itself garnered worldwide fame as a result of the incident and all the accumulated stories around it. It is nowadays most likely the number one hotspot for UFO enthusiasts and the target of what could be called pilgrimages to the area, which has become a special and one-of-a-kind tourist attraction. What really transpired at Roswell on that fateful July day, one that would become the reference to the possible extraterrestrial visitors on Earth in the public awareness? Perhaps we will never get to know the truth, especially now with all the layers of accumulated stories, possibilities and speculations. Even with the recent revelations provided by witnesses and whistleblowers, including the reports of retrieved crashed objects of unknown origin, Roswell seems to be nowhere near the center of interest in those reports. Of course, we cannot also exclude the fact, and assuming that the incident actually included the crashed UFO, it is one of the 10+ retrieval operations testified about before the American Congress by David Grosh. The date of 1947 was indeed mentioned by him as well as by others, both insiders working for the US government and investigative journalists. Perhaps, after all, there is a grain of truth in theories claiming that this was an actual visitation by intelligent beings from somewhere out there. One of the more popular theories assuming the above indicates that the otherworldly craft operate using electromagnetic or magnetic fields, which are a part of the mechanism allowing them to move at such extraordinary speeds and perform crazy maneuvers. These fields used by the craft may have been disrupted by the radar station used by the Air Force, eventually leading to the crash we have just discussed. Another theory, even if this one is not compatible with the Roswell incident itself, claims that the nuclear tests release massive pulses of electromagnetic fields, which simply knock the non-human craft out of the sky. On a purely personal note, I have to admit that the Roswell crash is not exactly my favorite UFO/UAP event. While it is definitely extremely important, especially when it comes to raising awareness about the topic, I believe other events I am hoping to cover in the future are both much more convincing in terms of their unknown origin and provided much more tangible evidence, if only to mention the Belgian wave of 1990 or the Phoenix Lights of 1997. It was also the first alleged case, at least at the time, in which humanity came into direct contact with otherworldly beings. That said, it is still the defining event in all of ufology, one which happened at the crucial and delicate time when the Cold War had just begun. Humanity started tinkering with atomic arms race, and the geopolitics of the time were defined for the next 4 decades. In the next video, we are going to take a look at one of the 3 best known cases of alleged UFO contact experience which happened in my home country of Poland in 1978. Until then, take care and see you in the next one.